then let us go to the Skype machine, the one and only Big Brown himself, Brendan Schaub. Look at in the studio, no less. Had to stunt on me,
What's up,
didn't you?
brother? Man, it's a big day for you. I couldn't just be doing this from my house in my undies, man.
I appreciate that. How are you, buddy?
I'm great, man. I'm doing great. How are you doing? First day.
I know. I had to take Pepto-Bismol as a precaution because I didn't want my rear end exploding from nervousness on the air. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right. You were born for this, man. I'm proud of you. It's cool, man.
Thanks, dude. Well, thank you for coming on and making time for us. I had spotlighted you on this show right when I found out that I was going to be taking it over. First of all, I know you were in Houston over the weekend. How was H-Town?
H-Town was great. It was hot. It's hot as hell, but phenomenal crowds, man. I never know how these things are going to go. You know, we're doing the Houston Improv, and it's one of the bigger improvs. San Jose is probably the biggest, then Houston's right there. And when they go on sale, I'm like, God, I hope people show up. And you never know, but some of the best crowds I've ever had, man. It was a good time.
How much of your audience at the comedy clubs, how much are they MMA fans? How much are they non? What's the mix?
I would say 60-40 MMA fans. You know, there's a lot. I get when I do the meet and greets, I get a ton of fight questions. I'd say 50-50, 60-40.
Something like that. Okay. How much of them know you? How much of them are surprised to learn you were a fighter? Like, oh, I just can't believe it.
Not too many, because I feel like it's pretty well documented. You know, they might know me from JRE, or if it's girls there, they know me from E, which are like, what, you fought? I'm like, oh yeah, yep. So there's that, man. But it's all good.
Fair enough. I want to talk a couple of headlines with you before we get into some other things. Machida heading over to Bellator. Your thoughts on that?
I love it, man. I love the move because, you know, with the UFC, with the ratings being down a little bit and their pay-per-view model, and then they're going over to ESPN, for a guy like Machida to go to Bellator, he'll be on free TV. There's some great matchups. You're telling me you wouldn't watch Machida versus Roy McDonald, you know, at 85, or Machida Gegard, or the rematch with Phil Davis or Bader, you know? So there's some great fights for him. You know, the sponsors over there, it's the Wild West. I love it. I love it for Machida. There's no USADA. I'm not saying he's on stuff. I'm just saying USADA, it's so strict that a lot of guys don't like to deal with that. So I think it's a brilliant move for a guy like Machida.
Yeah, I want to talk about the USADA thing for a little bit more. I'm not here to suggest that he's on anything. In fact, I thought getting busted for keto 7 DHEA was just absolutely insane. But let's put that aside for a moment. If you're Machida, what is he, 40, right at it, something like that? And now you have Josh Barnett. Now, I don't know if Josh Barnett is going to Bellator, but here's Barnett raised a point in his sort of announcement yesterday about why he was leaving the UFC. He had great things to say about UFC, but his point was, basically, I don't trust USADA, and I don't have another year to give away. I can totally understand guys who, when they've got the clock is ticking, you got a little bit of time left to make some big money at the height of your name, or relative height of your name. Why not go somewhere else?
I agree. And for a guy like Barnett and the way that was handled, and there's no like, my bad, man, we took a year of your career, especially a super important year of your career. There's no compensation from the UFC. I think we're doing a disservice if you just take USADA for what they are and you think they're just salt of the earth and there's no motives behind all their stuff and the way they move. I think they're a great corporation. I think drug test is important, but a lot of it's political as well. So you see what's going on with Josh Barnett and a lot of these guys. I wouldn't want to be involved in that. If I was still fighting the UFC, that would drive me nuts, man. What they're doing, it's too much. I think it's ruining things more than helping.
What do you think would be the ideal scenario? My view has always been, let the fighters get together and pick an arrangement like they do in other leagues where you have some testing, but it's not the most strict thing in the world. But if those guys elect it, that's what you got to live with.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting it right on the head. That's exactly what they should do. Oh, you mean talk to the guys who actually have to go through it and punch each other in the face and deal with if the guys are on PEDs? You want to talk to those guys, see what they think? You mean like weigh-ins? When you decide to move the weigh-ins and every fighter's like, dude, we don't want that. And like, sorry, so that's why you need a union or a fighters organization or something like that, association. But we're so far behind that. You just got to take it, man. They're not going to do shit about it. You just got to take it.
Have you given up hope for a fighters union?
Yeah, I'd say at this point, I've talked to a lot of those people who are involved in it and just the dynamics to make that thing go. the fighters have to want it, man. And when I say fighters have to want it, that means everyone goes, you know what? This train's not moving. We're not putting any more coal in that goddamn engine into that fire until this happens. But you got, guys like Connor, and you got guys like John, you got all these people making good money, and then you got guys who, man, I got to eat. So there's such a vast difference between the upper level guys and the guys who are just getting there, where they have to fight, or guys are fat and happy at the top. So until they all decide not to move and do nothing until something changes, it doesn't matter what high-powered lawyers you have, who's representing you, what ideas they have. None of that matters. So I won't even entertain it really anymore. People come on the show and talk about it. I'm just like, all right, cool, man. You're not going to do shit.
Is there any red line that they won't allow to be crossed? Because I thought it'd be after the sale, the $4 billion, they got kind of antsy. And then I thought, man, when the television deal comes around, the ESPN one, I thought, man, they're just leaving so much money on the table. How much we don't know. But the point being is, and then now the weigh-in thing, I'm just wondering, like, what is the thing in your mind that they will say, okay, now this is just too much? I really don't know what it is.
I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea what that threshold is, because I thought if there was ever a time to do it, would be during these TV deals, during the TV rights. If all the fighters went, dude, they're in negotiations right now. Let's not do anything until they give us what we need, because that no one's going to pick up these rights until, if no one's fighting, no one's going to pick up these rights. But that, Skip, there wasn't even a mention of it. That wasn't even no one even brainstormed that. So, I'll continue watching, but yeah, I don't feel sorry for him anymore, anything like that.
Would you have signed a Project Spearhead card if you were still in the UFC?
No.
Why?
I wasn't a big enough name. I wasn't like I wasn't a Brock Lesnar or Jon Jones or DC or, Pettis at the time when I was fighting, when he was on Wheatie boxes. If you're just a run-of-the-mill guy, if you're like, the top 15 guy, you're floating around, 8 to 15, which I was one of those guys, and you go against the grain, you're never going to be world champion. B, you're going to get the worst matchups possible. It's too scary out there for those guys right now, because the reason is those guys 1 through 8 aren't sticking up for you. So they're going to get the benefits from it. I just wasn't a guy who could have been outspoken like that.
Have you ever trained with Donald Cerrone, by the way?
Yes, I have. Yeah, for a long time in Denver.
Do you have any cool training stories from Donald Cerrone? Like about what a maniac he is, but like a maniac in a good way?
Donald being a maniac, he's just, he's one of those guys who, he'd come in after, being on the boat all day, the lake all day, and come and spar 10 rounds and tear up everybody, and he'd have a sunburn on his face and on his back, and he'd have no hand wraps on, and he'd put freaking shin guards on and just whoop everyone's ass. When I first got to Jackson, I stayed with Cowboy and Leonard Garcia, and I just, he'd play video games and like ride horses and do shit when all I wanted to do is rest and conserve my energy. Then he'd go in there and just beat the brakes off everyone. So he's a special, special dude, man.
He always talks about his nervousness, but then when you ask people who know him, none of their stories about him involve him being nervous.
God, I wouldn't say that. His nerves in the back there are pretty intense, super intense. And typically, he's a slow starter because, he's so, he is terrified to fight. But he's a guy, once he gets going, it's a slow start, but you let him start firing off, and he's one of the best in the world. My thing for me with Cowboy is it's almost a shame because, Cowboy's gonna be one of those guys who we chalk up, with the Uriah Favors. Obviously, they're WC champions, but never UFC champions. And they had so much talent, they should have been UFC champions. I think in 2018, 2017, they started to change the tide. I don't think you can do that Donald Cerrone Cowboy way of fighting wherever, whoever. I don't care what name it is. I'll fight in Singapore at 4 a.m. with 70 watchers. I'll go fight Darren Till in Liverpool. The guys are too good now. Guys are good at everything. You got to take it more serious, more like a professional approach where you need the timing, you need those camps. And I know everyone goes, anytime, anywhere, we love that. That's the best, man. That's Cowboy. I get that. But you're never going to be world champion doing that. You just can't these days.
Let's change gears here if we can for just a little bit. You had Kevin Lee over the weekend asking for a St. Pierre fight. I don't know how likely that is, but let's put that aside because the other portion of it was a 165-pound weight class. Are you in favor of the 165-pound weight class?
I like more weight classes. I think it'd be good. You know, I'd rather have more weight classes than more interim belts. They make more sense than interim belts. And guys who are killing themselves to make certain weights and stuff like that. So the more classes, the less severity of weight cutting is going to be an issue. But you know, as far as Kevin Lee getting that GSP fight, there's so many moving balls there for that to happen. He might as well call it out Hoist Gracie. It's not happening.
Yeah, I don't mind the guys calling it out though. Why not? Shoot your shot. You never know.
Shoot your shot. You understand they're represented by the same agent. So shoot your shot.
They're both.
Could be.
They're both CAA.
They're both CAA guys. Yeah, they're both which I am too. So you know, the only reason why I look at it, go, maybe there's something there, because you know, if you're gonna fire that shot, you're firing it for a reason. I don't see, and it's such a random call out. You know what I'm saying? So it's so random at 165. You know, the only way you're going to lure that legend of GSP out of that cage is with a Khabib or Conor fight at 55. So he's only cutting to 55 once. The Nate Diaz fight, who some would argue is a bigger fight than Kevin Lee, probably an easier fight than Kevin Lee, but a bigger name if you want numbers, that didn't lure him out. So Kevin Lee at 65, I guess if George just wants to take a fight and collect another belt, you know, if that's his logic behind it, I don't know. I don't see it happening though.
I asked Dan Hardy this. He was on the show earlier. What fight from that July 6, July 7, back-to-back, so that'd be the Ultimate Fighter, Israel Adesanya, Brad Tavares card, and then, of course, UFC 226. Of all those fights, which one are you looking forward to the most?
There'd be two. It'd be Derek Lewis, Francis Ngannou, which is just a freaking hell of a fight. Whoever lands first is definitely going to sleep. And then DC Stipe. I find that fight so fascinating. I find it fascinating, man.
Okay, why? On what grounds do you find it fascinating?
I find it fascinating because what's interesting is we're calling a super fight, which to me it's a super fight. Is, you know, probably the best super fight in UFC history. When you look at what DC has done at light heavyweight, his only losses come to Jon Jones, and him being undefeated at heavyweight, you know, the Strikeforce Grand Prix champion, and then him just doing work in the UFC at heavyweight, and how good DC is. And then Stipe, I feel like, has never got the credit he deserves, being the winningest heavyweight of all time in the UFC, especially at heavyweight, and the guys that he's beat, that people, I think, are always coming up, yeah, but he didn't beat Kane in his prime, or he didn't beat this guy in his prime, where Stipe is just doing his thing. And even I counted him out against Francis, and he mopped the floor with Francis. So I think it is a legit super fight, man. It's not getting enough attention that it should be getting. And what's interesting, too, is you see DC going, if I can beat Stipe, I'll be regarded as the greatest of all time. And what I flinched when I first heard it. I'm like, well, no, the Jon Jones, you can't, because Jon Jones. But then when you look at his record and you see what he's done, I mean, there's argument for it. It's not a bad argument, you know, not at all. Yeah,
it's a much better argument than people realize. I don't know if I agree yet because, A, I need to see the fight and let's see what happens. And even if he wins, is it controversial, whatever. But let's say he goes in there and just starches him in 2 rounds, which let's just say it happens. You can make the argument if you want, right, that not only did he do that, he had this belt at light heavyweight, and the losses that he had were to a guy who had these essentially these performance-enhancing drug issues. Now, I personally am not that moved by that argument. I know some people are, but you can make the case that way.
There's a case, and you can argue, and people are like, all right, but no one's like fully convinced. I'm waiting for someone to come up with an argument that really moves the people. But to me, you know, with the Jon Jones, the dark cloud over him, it's a decent argument. I love the fight, man. Because also I love the fight. I'm very curious because I don't think DC should be as big as an underdog that he is. I think it's crazy. If you want to make some money, I would definitely bet the dog on DC for sure.
Stipe is already considered at least the best UFC heavyweight of all time, maybe the best heavyweight of all time. What does he get if he beats Cormier? Does he get another level of something that he currently doesn't have?
Yeah, because you could say, you know, DC, I guess, is, you know, sort of in his prime. You know, he's talking about retiring after this one, unless, you know, that Brock Lesnar monster comes out and can get him out for another super fight. But I guess it's just more, I think all Stipe is looking for to get validated as the best of all time is these fights, you know, the DCs, the Brock Lesnar. So I think that's why he's doing it, because at heavyweight, who else is left for him? Who else? Name a guy you're dying to see Stipe fight.
Brock Lesnar? Jon Jones?
Correct. Agreed. So all super fights.
Right. By the way, you mentioned that he was an underdog according to Best Fight Odds at various places. He's as high as plus 225 at certain. Oh, excuse me, as high as plus 230 at certain places. So you're right, a fairly substantial underdog. Daniel Cormier is. If you want to get in some money on that. Speaking of Brock Lesnar and Jon Jones, please tell me you are in favor of this happening. I don't know what the mechanics are that need to be moved to make that fight happen, but certain. I mean, there's no bad angle to that fight, right?
Hey, Golden Snitch, USADA, take a hike. Beat it, nerds. I don't care what you got to do to make this fight happen. I don't care if you just let them do it in a basement of someone's house, but I got to see this fight. It's my number one fight I want to see. Talk about a super fight. That's a ridiculous fight. I don't want the Golden Snitch and USADA to get in the way of this. There's things that need to happen, and you guys cannot prevent this from happening. I don't care what it takes to make this fight happen.
Who would you favor at the outset?
Oh, Jon Jones.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't think there's a man alive he can't beat when he's at his best. True or false?
Agreed. Completely agree 100%. I think, take away some of the drugs he's taken, if that does come true, but he's the greatest fighter ever graced that Octagon.
And now we get to you. If you watch your podcast, for example, you had on Derek Lewis more recently. By the way, how is he in person? I hear he's delightful.
He's amazing. He's a good dude. And also, with the Below the Belt TV show, we do a lot of comedy stuff in there. So with Derek, he's also a funny guy on Instagram. That's why we wanted to bring him in. I thought it'd be a good fit. But we don't know each other. We've never met. The only time I've ever talked to him is he called me out after beating some guy, and I was retired. I'm like, well, no, dude, call someone else out. So we don't know each other at all. So he gets there. He's a good dude, great dude. We do the sit down interview first in studio, and then I pitch him the comedy bits and what we want to do. But it took him a little while to get going, but he's a great dude, man.
And now here you are on your podcast. You cover a lot of boxing. How much of that do you organically enjoy? Because you come from MMA, but you do like combat sports. But I'm just sort of wondering, like what is your level of enthusiasm for boxing these days?
I definitely say it got way bigger once I joined Showtime. Obviously I had my foot in the door there from the Conor Floyd stuff. I've always been a huge boxing fan. But when they ask you to cover some more stuff and you start to, just like anything, you get more into that world, and then, you start to meet these guys, and, I love it. Now, I'll say this, I'm not a guy, if MMA is on Access TV or I'll watch Bellator, I'll watch Invicta, I'll watch everything MMA. With boxing, unless it's a stud up-and-comer or unless it's a big name, I'm usually not tuning in. So that's the difference there. MMA, I will watch regardless. Boxing, I have to either know them, have a connection, or know that guy's headed somewhere.
Is Triple G Canelo the fight you are anticipating most this year? Or something else?
No, I'm over Triple G Canelo. Once Canelo ate those tacos and blamed it on that, I'm out, man. I'm out.
Really? You don't buy that?
I'd much rather see. I can't believe that man has all that money. You got Oscar De La Hoya has been caught, cross-dressing with whores and stuff with cocaine. You guys go through all that, and that's the best you came up with? Are you shitting me? The six of you are in the room, and that was, dude, should we go tacos? Yeah, let's go tacos. It's 2018. Even my girl's Mexican as shit. Even she's like, oh, God damn it. Like, no one bought it, man. So I was disappointed. I mean, I'll watch it. Obviously, I'm into it. But Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua's the fight, man. That's the freaking fight.
Does that happen in 2018?
I'm going to say yes. They both verbally agreed to it. Hearn came out today saying, it's in Deontay's corner. There's nothing else left to do. From my sources at Showtime, which are pretty good, it would be, the plan is the first fight's in the UK. Joshua fights Wilder there. And then the rematch, no matter what happens, is in the US. So it's good for both guys. You're going to get a trilogy fight out of this. So it'd be so good for boxing, man. It's a great matchup. That's the fight I'm looking for.
Well, Brendan, you have always been good to me. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a road warrior, and the like means a lot that you came on this show, man. Thank you so much. And everybody should watch the Below the Belt podcast. Anything you want to plug before you go?
No, sir, man. I just want to thank you for having me on, man, and congrats to you, brother. I know this is a big move for you, and you've earned it, man. And you're one of the most talented guys in the business. So good things happen to good people, man. So I'm proud of all you guys at fighting. You know, you guys are killing it, man.
Thank you, Brendan. Enjoy the road and keep wearing those ridiculous shoes. I enjoy them.
Thank you, sir. I'm on it.
There he goes. Brendan Schaub, ladies and gentlemen. Big thanks to him for stopping by.